And that's kind of like the core thrust of the movie, I guess, is like how much is too much from this guy. Like
Maybe I took the wrong lesson. I definitely took the wrong lesson. Leonard Bernstein is the fucking man.
Episode 3.
How the hell are you?
Yeah, good week. It's like the end of the year, so of course my daughter got sick in school, so then I got sick. That's why I look like I'm off like a 3-day bender right now. But I'm chilling, man. How about you?
Yeah, just excited for the holidays and yeah, just feeling good. Feeling cozy.
Yeah.
So what did we watch this week?
This week we watched Maestro. This is the new. I'm just going to read all of Bradley Cooper's credits on this thing. Director Bradley Cooper, written by Bradley Cooper with Josh Singer, who also wrote. Josh Singer also wrote Spotlight and The Post and First Man, so he's like one of the faves of like prestige, big actor-led movies right now. It's produced by Bradley Cooper, but also a couple of startups named Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg.
Who?
I didn't know this, but this movie was originally being developed by Spielberg for a very long time.
Oh, interesting.
And then the legend goes, this is like something that Bradley Cooper's Manic Awards campaign has been revealed, which we can talk about in a little bit. But Spielberg was visiting Bradley Cooper on the set of Star is Born. And Spielberg watched Cooper direct a scene, and he was like, "You're the man for the job," and like gave him this movie. And that's how Bradley Cooper.
And the director credit, like it wasn't like, "Oh, you're going to star in my movie." Like,
no, he's like, "You're going to direct it," and then I think Cooper was like, "Oh, if I'm going to direct, then I'm going to do the whole thing where I'm the one man show."
I think it was all the more better for that.
I think so.
It felt like it had a really strong vision.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's great.
And he also is obviously the lead. So yeah, it's just the Bradley Cooper show.
I didn't know Bradley Cooper had it in him. I love Bradley Cooper. No disrespect, but this was fucking incredible.
Yeah.
Dude, it's bonkers.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful movie.
It is a beautiful movie.
I
totally agree.
It's so good.
Yeah.
It came out yesterday. So we have barely processed it. We watched it last night. We didn't talk about it. So it might be hard to put into words, but I was not expecting to like it. And particularly like we did Leave the World Behind last week. And that's a very accessible movie. It's got a very interesting premise from the outset, has a great cast. And this felt very much like, prestigious, and it's cinema and
it's
awards.
Definitely, going for like the Oscar-y like awards vibe.
And so I was like, is it going to be like, quote unquote, a movie I have to say I like, but isn't enjoyable? And it was like 2 hours and 10 minutes. And I was like, oh, fuck, Elias, what'd you make me do? But I loved it from the get-go. The pacing was great. The vision and the thing I actually liked the most about it, if we can get into it.
Let's get into it.
If you can.
And we haven't discussed spoilers, but let's just get into it.
Yeah, maybe we'll just talk about like broad things and then
great.
And then we'll go into spoilers. But I don't know if you clocked this, but the dialogue and the conversation, it just felt like somebody put a tape recorder in the middle of a room.
Yeah.
And
I was really, yes.
It was insane.
It was great. And Bradley Cooper in particular, if you don't know, he plays Leonard Bernstein, who's regarded as the greatest American conductor of all time. He's like a huge figure in music and in American culture. I'll be very honest, I know very little about Leonard Bernstein. So
the song. It's the End of the World.
Oh, yeah.
Leonard Bernstein.
Which gets a shout out at the end of the movie. But yeah, so Bradley Cooper clearly really did his homework and developed this speech pattern that really sounds like from the 50s, like it has that.
Right.
It sounds like an old movie, but it's actually how he talks.
It's that, but conversational.
It's great.
And it works.
It's intoxicating. Like you're into it right away. You just want to hear him go, and like you said, the dialogue in the movie is extremely naturalistic.
Yeah.
So people are like talking over each other. Sometimes the lines are not meant to they're not straight to camera. It's like people chit-chatting. You can barely hear what they're saying.
It's like muffled, and they keep the camera running longer than they should, and the words just taper off. And the only other films or filmmakers that I can pinpoint that do this so well as the Safdie brothers. It felt like a period piece Safdie
Interesting.
kind of thing.
Interesting. Yeah. And in terms of what?
Just not the content, obviously, but like the energy of the three people in a room, and there's so much shit happening. You're in a party and everybody's just talking over each other, repeating words, and not the context is getting lost, but it just feels very real.
I wish I knew how much of it was blocked, like in rehearsal, versus how much of it was like, here's three actors in a space, just go nuts, and the camera will keep up.
Yeah,
because it really does feel, at times, very lived in. Like you're just like a camera in someone's space, and you're just watching them exist. I was a little nervous in the very beginning. It opens really beautifully with Bernstein as an old man, and then we flash back, and I loved what they did with the different film stocks looks.
Yeah.
So it starts in color, and then we flash back to the 50s, and now it's in 5:4 black and white. And we have this beautiful scene where we kind of meet young Leonard, and then he gets the call that he's going to be the maestro, and that's like the beginning of his career. And then the camera flies through, and we have this big, like, super Hollywood shot of like flying through the space and match cuts, and we land on the conductor's podium, and then we fly back up to Leonard Bernstein. And I was like, oh no, this is gonna be another movie with like these insanely super high concept like shots where I'm just like, oh, this is a cartoon,
like Bohemian Rhapsody-ish, where it's like it zooms through a bus and it's like
or
overly
Leave the World Behind. Last week we were talking about like the shots were overwrought. I was like, if there could be like doing like musical stuff, I was just like, I'm just not really in the mood to sit through like but it was very, I thought from like a technical perspective, the movie, the cinematography, the sets, the costumes, so beautiful. You just want to live in every space. You want to just wrap yourself in the fabrics and go through his bookshelf, and
those stylized moments were earned. Like it's actually the opposite of Leave the World Behind, where it's like he was just, in our opinion, just doing it to do it, whereas in Maestro, it was like you were just getting in the head of this fucking manic artist guy, and it's like that's how he sees the world. People just like dancing and things zooming, and it only happened in piercing moments where the rest of the film was very grounded, and it made those moments enjoyable instead of like, oh, confusing, you know?
Yeah, and the whole point of I'm jumping ahead, but I'm not really sure what the point of the movie was, but to me,
I have thoughts.
Clearly, Leonard Bernstein was an outstandingly charismatic, magnetic dude.
Yes.
Like, the way Bradley Cooper portrays him is like the most interesting man in the room. He never is stuck for something to say. He's always winning a conversation. He's just magnetic, and people are just drawn to him.
Yeah.
And I thought Bradley Cooper did an incredible job of portraying that. And it's also the character's downfall, which is kind of like the way it kind of plays out in the movie. But the way everything is made, the spaces, the extras, the costumes, like, you just want to live in his world. You just want to be a part of his thing.
Yes.
Like, there's an early scene. There's two, like, party scenes where he's, like, in the 50s and then, like, later in the 70s. And I was like, man, I just want to hang out at this party.
You want to be friends with him.
I want to be friends with him. I want to be, like, a Leonard Bernstein sycophant. Like, one of those people who just, like, go to the party just to, like, say that I met him, and like I want to be there.
You know what's interesting with that too? So I feel like there's only a few people I can think of that fit this category. But back in the day, especially the 50s and 60s, you had some artists. David Bowie. Yeah. He's really old. 50s, he started making music. But he's a true individual, unique guy.
Right.
Leonard Bernstein, I didn't know anything about him, but I think he fits that mold. Lou Reed, total fucking weirdo from the 50s. And like, it's almost hard to imagine, because it's like nowadays those attributes of like, I'm an individual, I'm gonna wear my hair weird, I'm gonna wear glitter, it's like fine, whatever, no one's even gonna bat an eye.
Interesting.
But like, for those people to do it in their time was so particularly wild and so particularly brave and just different that it's almost like you have to have more all of them than maybe some contemporary artists that are just following in their footsteps.
Yeah, and I thought the movie did an interesting job, because in contrast to like a Bowie, who once he became like Spaceman, Odyssey, like he's like an alien, like he's not meant to fit in anywhere.
Right.
The whole point of the movie, or a major point of the movie, is that...
Well, should we siphon this to spoilers?
It's not spoilers yet, because it's really, what I'm going to say is that he's he's like the creme de la creme. He's like the toast of the town, high society.
Yeah.
So he lives in like the Upper East Side echelon type people, very moneyed, very high class, quote unquote. Like we're talking like Upper East Side's old money,
Yes.
50s and 60s. Like he's idolized by those people, but the lifestyle that he leads is extremely progressive. He's clearly either gay or bisexual. Like he's sexually very fluid. He just kind of loves who he loves all the time. The
Yeah.
people around him celebrate him for that, and the people he has congregate around him want to do that with him.
Right.
And he never really encounters like pushback.
I thought, oh my God, that was just such a genius choice. Because we've all seen the period piece where it's like the guy is living in shame and he might have a fallout with his wife. And this is a 50s movie where you have just two guys in Central Park kissing in fedoras and a suit. And it's just like, they don't give a shit. The people around them don't give a shit.
Yeah.
And for some reason, it just feels more real. It's less, I don't know, stereotyped, and it's just human. Honestly, if he was that way, and I'm sure he was, and he had lots of people who loved him, and he loved, and it wasn't like this big thing.
I'd be curious in real life how closeted Leonard Bernstein was versus his portrayal in this movie.
Me too. Yeah.
Because in the movie, it's way out in the open.
Yeah. At least with his close orbit. Like, I'm sure in public life and interviews and Ed Sullivan, maybe.
Yeah, but it's
like,
hardly a secret.
Hardly a secret. He's just being him. And also they one conductor, the Russian guy who's also Jewish, was like, maybe change your name to Burns. And he was like, maybe. And he's like, fuck that.
Yeah.
So like, he's just being him the whole movie.
No, it's great. And then once we kind of get a taste for this incredibly charismatic character, Carey Mulligan as Felicia Montelegro, excuse me.
Montelegro or Montelegre?
Montelegre. Anyway,
Sorry.
I'm not going to pronounce it correctly. She is Leonard Bernstein's wife, and they meet, and it's kind of starts this incredible relationship.
Yes.
But to what we're saying, she is very much like, I see who you are. I love you for who you are. Let's get married. Let's build a life together. But with you continuing to be who you are, I'm not asking you to change a thing.
Right.
Which is so fascinating. And then the movie, once that relationship is solidified, which I thought, to be honest, was like a little bit slow in the beginning of like kind of setting up all the pieces.
Yeah.
Then the movie just goes.
Yeah, just hard cuts to like 10 years later without any. It's just like, whoa.
Suddenly they're married with kids. We jumped West Side Story. Like, we don't see him like.
It wasn't about his career.
No, I mean, it was about him
and his relationship ultimately with his wife.
Yeah,
and it's a challenging movie because it's not a passive experience, and they really, I think, treat the people watching it with respect, because it's like you always have to catch up. You're at some other time period and you're trying to figure out who's this person. They just introduce people without explaining who their name is, and then by osmosis you start to figure out, oh, this is just like his manager, or this is his friend, but there's no exposition. There's hardly any exposition. It was
I totally
great.
agree. I thought it was extremely sophisticated in its storytelling.
Yeah.
There's never a moment where someone kind of like a character who plays a proxy for the audience is like, who's that person? And like, oh, welcome to old Hollywood. And they like pan the camera around to introduce to people, even though they do that. Like, there are setup shots like that.
Yeah.
But it's never spoon-fed to you.
Right.
You're just kind of expected to either know the characters in this world, like the true historical figures, or just kind of be along for the ride and let it kind of wash over you.
Right.
Which I was totally happy. Like, again, I know very little, admittedly, about that time and that world.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are references to other stage actors and musicians, and there's like historical figures coming in and out of the movie that I'm sure were totally over my head.
Right.
But I was happy. I was just like, this is just such a vibe. I'm so excited just to like live in it. And sure, I'll take I'm going to do some Googles afterwards, but I just thought it was really lovely just kind of like following them around.
It was, yeah. It was very like, you're just a fly on the wall to this person's whole life, and it was intimate in the right ways and exciting, and no one was one-dimensionalized, and that's pretty tough to do. Okay.
So now we can get into, I don't disagree. I think this is the core I go watch the movie. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Totally enjoyable, worth a watch. The relationship aspect of it, as the movie played out, I kept asking myself, like, what or who is this movie about? Bradley Cooper and all of his award campaigns, of which he's like, he's going for it.
Yeah.
He's like everywhere. He insists that it's a movie about a relationship.
Right.
And I'm like, cool. And even on the poster, it's him and his wife, like it's a two-hander. Great. Then I watched the movie and I'm like, Bernstein is a very multifaceted, three-dimensional character, super complex. His wife is very interesting and played by Carey Mulligan, who is never bad. She's just like one of the best prestige actors working right now, I think.
Yeah.
But we never really know much, I thought, about her and her motivations. She's just kind of like in love with Leonard Bernstein. And then
I don't know.
that's kind of it.
I don't know. I feel like okay, so I think you're right in some sense, but I think almost it was intentional, and the point of the film was he's such a presence.
Yeah.
He has this reality distortion field around him. He's sucking up all the energy in the room, and she even says that to him at one point.
Sure.
And she, despite that, has such a quiet, maybe, but dignity and like joy, and she really loved him, and she was very talented in her own right. And there's a scene where she's on the stage and he's conducting, and all you see is his shadow.
Yeah.
And so I think a big theme of it was, in a sense, she was living in his shadow. But
Right.
you know, if they revisionist history of it, of like, you know, I think it was realistic, you know, and
Yeah.
that could be a fault, but I just thought it was beautifully done.
Yeah, that's the thing where this movie, if I think about individual scenes, I'm like, oh, that scene at the party was beautiful, or him conducting was so magnetic and beautiful. Did it coalesce as a whole movie by the end? I'll be honest, I'm not really sure like what the main thrust of the movie was. Like, it was an incredible character study.
Yeah.
I don't really know what it was about necessarily.
I feel like I resonate not with who Leonard Bernstein is and how he acts, but
Okay.
I resonate with a man trying to be everything. And behind that desire it's almost the opposite of a lot of movies. It's love, and it's a love of life and a love of people. I feel like at least the way they portrayed him, maybe not the real Leonard Bernstein, but in the movie, to his core, he just loved people. He
Right.
loved his family. He loved his kids. He loved his lovers. He loved his musicians. And I feel like the bad version of this movie would be a guy his dad was cruel, he mentioned, but like has guilt of his dad and shame, and what's driving his perfection and need for success, almost like a whiplash thing. It's like he's hollow.
Yeah.
But it was the opposite. His cup was so full that it was brimming, and that was his fault. And I don't know, I just thought that was so interesting and rarely explored in a movie.
Yeah. He's just winning the entire movie.
We're all pretty much losers in compared to this guy. He kind of landed the plane as beautifully as you can.
Yeah. I think that's such a fun thing to watch of the movie.
Yeah.
He's just a guy who hit like very rarefied success at a very young age and just held it.
And without yes, him and his wife had strain, but was able to, be with his wife their whole life.
Yeah.
They obviously loved each other their whole life. His kids adored him. He wasn't some secret sociopath obsessed with work. Like, he sacrificed work to be with his family when it counted. He liked a good time.
Yeah.
He liked to hang.
I think his downfall, at least what they're trying to say in the movie, is that his like self-obsessed, like self-mythologizing thing
Yeah,
is his Achilles heel.
totally.
Like, he's so swept up in his own thing,
In his own bullshit.
that it's to the detriment of the people around him.
For
Which
sure.
they say outright in the movie. He gets confronted a few times. I thought one of the best scenes in the movie is when he and his wife are having an argument,
And the Snoopy.
and the Snoopy floats by. They're in this beautifully appointed, I think it's what street does the Thanksgiving Day parade go down? Fifth Avenue?
Yeah.
So they're whatever. They're in like this beautiful apartment, and they have this very, very high tension, like marital spat that I thought was incredibly well acted. It's like what you were saying before. It's in one take. You're kind of like a fly on the wall. So it's just two people. It's almost like a stage show. Like,
Yeah.
it felt like a real argument between two people who know each other almost too well and are just like saying the worst things possible to each other.
Yeah.
It was really powerful. But she basically says, like, you pretend that you love everybody, but really you're just an energy vampire.
Yeah.
And you're sucking all the attention to yourself. And you don't do it because you love people. You do it because you love yourself. Which, to say that to your husband is like a brutal thing to say.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like the core thrust of the movie, I guess, is like, how much is too much from this guy? Like,
Maybe I took the wrong lesson. I definitely took the wrong lesson. Leonard Bernstein is the fucking man.
Oh, no.
Like, I'm like, hell yeah, brother. You lived life on your terms.
I think
you did nothing wrong.
So the core tension that I felt, not in the movie, but in like the creation of the movie, is that I really felt Bradley Cooper struggling to take a hard stance either way.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's such a interesting dude in real life, and he's so clearly is just like, I want to win Oscars. I want to be like one of the Mount Rushmore filmmaker dudes, like Hollywood elite.
Yeah.
And he built, like, Steven Spielberg and Martin Scorsese are producing this movie. Like, you cannot have a bigger cosign.
Right.
That I almost felt Bradley Cooper taught his own personal conflicts coming through in the movie.
Huh.
Where he's like, I am this tortured genius. I love my art so much. I want to live with reckless abandon in pursuit of this art.
Yep.
But it's also hurting the people that I love. And it's also
see
hurts
that.
my life. And I couldn't tell if he was like trying to be autobiographical about it or if it was by accident.
Well, if you think about it, he is a good parallel to Leonard Bernstein, because he started as a commercial actor, like The Hangover and
Yeah.
more broadly appealed movies, but now he's ascending to this high art. And maybe Leonard Bernstein started the opposite way, where he got his big break as the New York Philharmonic, but then went to do West Side Story. So they were both playing in both these spaces, and that's interesting. I never thought of it like
Yeah.
that.
Also, I was listening to The Big Picture before I got here, and they made a great point that he's only made 2 movies, and both movies are a tortured genius musician who kind of destroys their own life in pursuit of like being like this larger than life character. So maybe there's like some autobiographic
I'm
something
sure
that he's
there
trying to
is.
work out in his art.
Yeah.
Which is to our benefit, to be honest, because we get to watch him do this stuff. And when he's on, like when he as a director is doing it, and as an actor too, to be honest, it's outstandingly good. Like
He's
he
very
has calling it cinematic is such a bullshit cop out.
Yeah.
But he has that movie moment thing where he just knows how to make like, there's a swelling music and the camera is where it's supposed to be and the performance is like just you feel them you feel him the Leonard Bernstein is reanimated in that moment.
Yes.
There's scenes of him conducting, and you're watching him do his thing.
Yeah. It's drenched in sweat.
And it's so captivating.
Yeah.
Probably my 2 favorite scenes of the movie is you're on him, and then the one at the I think it's Mahler where he's in the chapel.
Right.
And it's him. It's literally Bradley Cooper conducting this monster orchestra, and apparently he trained for like 5 years as a conductor to like get
I
it.
saw that. Yeah. It's
And
crazy.
it's so captivating, and I was like, I could watch this forever because it's so you get why Leonard Bernstein was such a magnetic figure. You're watching Bradley Cooper is so intoxicating in that moment.
Yeah.
You're swept away in
And-
his passion. It's really beautiful.
I was in high school chorus at a Catholic school.
So you basically have lived this life.
I was pretty much Leonard Bernstein. But brother Joshua was like the conductor of, all these kids. It was the biggest chorus, I think, maybe definitely in the state, maybe in the country, it was like hundreds of kids.
Wow.
And the way his eyes would bulge, and like Bradley Cooper got that.
Yeah.
Like he nailed it, and it was just you believed him, and yeah, it was very impressive. It was awesome.
Anything that didn't work for you? No.
That I'm trying to find something, dude.
Wow. So this is like he aced it for you. This is like a 10 out of 10 for you.
I think maybe my expectations were so low.
How
I
come?
thought this because I was like, I didn't see A Star Is Born. So like honestly, I was like Bradley Cooper trying to I'm an artist, guys. Think of me differently. And it's like a long ass movie that they're just gonna give him an award for. And I didn't know anything about Leonard Bernstein. It just blew me away. It was incredible.
It's interesting that you say that because your perception of Cooper, I think he in his award campaign, to me, it comes off as so desperate to be given the validation of getting the Best Director Oscar.
Yeah.
Like he just wants that level of prestige.
Yeah. He wants that badge.
He wants that badge. And I think you nailed it that he's started from quote unquote humbler origins of like being in commercials and on TV and then comedies, and now he's kind of working his way up to like quote unquote prestige. I see that in about him when he's like doing press. I think it's a funny thing about him as like a human being, and then to feel that bleed through the movie.
Yeah.
Where there are moments where I'm like, oh, this is a scene where he was like, this is gonna be my Oscar, my best actor. He's like, this is gonna be my highlight reel scene.
Yeah.
And I just, maybe I'm too sensitive, or maybe I'm like, I was looking for it. So
it was like an actor's actor. Like, this is like my masterclass.
Yeah.
Kind of
And
thing.
this movie is so classic in the Oscar baitiness of it, of like, I'm going to wear prosthetics and I'm going to do over the
nose
years.
rules, dude.
The nose worked.
I love the nose.
I'll
If he
concede.
didn't have the nose, that would have been my only critique.
Based on the trailer, I was very critical because I was like, if you're just wearing a nose to look more Jewish, I'm pissed off. But the prosthetics across the whole movie were probably, I would say, the best I've ever seen.
I thought he looked better with the nose.
Than real Bradley Cooper.
Yeah.
It gave him more character.
You should keep that nose.
I'm telling you, man. Big noses do things for people. But yeah, I was really blown away. The prosthetics, especially, because aging makeup in movies can really sink a whole thing. I've seen great movies, where the character at the end of the movie is supposed to have aged 30 years or whatever, and it looks so bad.
It looks like a kid's play.
Harry Potter did it, and it was awful. Even like Clint Eastwood and J. Edgar.
Oh, right. Leo. The jowls.
And Leo is one of the best doing it, and it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it looks terrible. Or The Irishman, where they tried to go digital to like de-age and re-age. It just doesn't work.
De Niro like stomping.
Yeah, De Niro has the
like
face of a 30-year-old, but he has the silhouette of a 75-year-old and like the knees of an 80-year-old. He just like can't. So I just thought that like
it's like the most brittle 25-year-old you've ever seen.
So Cooper, as a young man, and then as he ages, his physicality changes, and then by the end of the movie, he's like 80.
Yeah.
And they make an interesting comment, I thought, where at the end of the movie, he's like teaching young people. And did you see Tar?
No.
All right, so I won't even go there. But he's teaching this class, and he's like older, and he's paunchy, and he's kind of like in his like golden years.
Yeah.
And it's really beautiful, and you get to see like, oh, he's like very tan. He looks like he's living his best life, and he's teaching this young black conductor to like how to do it, and he's like passing the baton to the next generation. And then they smash cut to him grinding on that same conductor in a club, and I was like, oh,
yeah,
interesting,
wild,
because obviously Bernstein was like going like just chasing tail to the day he died.
His wife was, spoilers, his wife was gone.
Yeah.
And yeah, he was just doing his thing.
But
all gas, no brakes.
I thought that the part to me was like, I thought it was great. The way it was shot was great. And it's just like him.
And it was like a Cure song or the Smiths or something.
It's
I forgot.
Yeah,
it was something very modern that it's like, why is this like elite conductor listening to this.
It's just in a club. Yeah, it was in a club.
But it's almost like yes, it was natural in the environment, but
it's like
they put him in that environment. It's so
he's being a dirty old man.
Yeah,
which
it's wild.
The movie I thought was supposed to be like celebrating that, but I'm also thinking like in our day and age we know and are having really important conversations about sexual dynamics and power structure. And so this movie is like this old man is clearly sleeping with like his young protege. The power dynamic is a little iffy.
Like the Greeks.
Sure. I mean,
no, of
you
course,
Greek,
yeah.
you tell me.
That's how we do it. No, you're right. I think that's a really good point. But it wasn't moralizing. And
I just thought it was an interesting in that scene, you're just like, cool, man. Like,
it's a little creepy.
I think it's meant to be like he's still kind of a dirty dog until the day he died. Good alliteration there by me, by the way. I wasn't quite sure, again, like, what is he trying to say in that moment? Like, is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? Should we be celebrating him for this? Or is he just like a complex dude and it's like you take the bad with the good?
Yeah, I wasn't like, when I saw that scene, it was more like, I think you're right. Oh, it wasn't like, yeah, you go, Lenny. And it wasn't like, oh, you disgusting, gross human. Yeah, just adding another ridge, I think, to
just
a man.
Another facet to his character.
Yeah.
Making it complex. I thought it was I really enjoyed watching it. I might, not anytime soon, but go back and watch it again.
Yeah.
It's a very, most of the movie is a very fast clip. And you're like time jumping very quickly. And there's a baby in one scene and then the baby is a teenager in the next scene. So like you're time jumping.
It's disorienting because you don't know what time period is when. And maybe that's one critique, if I had to say, was like, I got that in the past it was black and white and the aspect ratio was like square and shit. And then at some point it transitioned to color and it felt maybe a little arbitrary because like black and white was a little more magical realism. And then right when it transitioned to color, it was just like a very grounded film.
He's doing things in the movie that a lesser director would come off as super schlocky.
Yeah.
And like switching media format depending on the era.
Yeah.
Could be in less skilled hands really corny.
Yeah.
But he does it kind of seamlessly.
I think he gets away with it.
I was ready to roll my eyes at it, but then especially in the black and white, the whole movie is beautiful to look at. Like it's a movie you could just have on with no sound in the background and it'd be great just to watch. But he has some shots in the beginning of the movie in the black and white where he's clearly paying homage to that era of filmmaking.
Where Felicia comes up and it's like almost like a noir.
She gets off this bus and she walks into she hits her spot in the light.
Yeah.
She just kind of like stands there and looks, which is like clearly exactly like you said. And I was like, this is so good that I'm not mad about it. Like I see exactly what you're doing, but it's so beautiful and well done that I can't be cynical
was
about
like
it.
I don't know, was the point there, maybe we're overinterpreting it, like there was something magical to that time period.
Yeah.
And things felt a little less real and light and your feet were lighter and
in the
that's
movie,
what it felt like.
I have two thoughts there. In the movie, that's like you said, it's magical.
Yeah.
To the point where there's like this like dream sequence dance thing where basically the couple goes to what's the name of I think the show is Out on the Town, which Leonard Bernstein wrote the music for.
Okay.
So they're ostensibly in the scene, they're going to rehearsal. But then they're in the play and it's not clear. It's a dream sequence, right? I was a little confused by that.
I thought it was just like a quick way to represent like the ups and downs of their relationship.
Yeah.
But I wasn't too sure. It was very unclear.
And it's kind of explaining that Felicia really understands Leonard Bernstein. Like he's watching the other male dancer clearly like hungrily staring at him.
Yeah.
And she like kind of accepts that, but it's like an expressive dance routine in the middle of this thing. So very magical. And I think as a director, he's doing the big swing, I want to win an Oscar thing of like, I'm going to represent different eras of filmmaking.
Right.
And like pay homage to eras of filmmaking by every time I'm in a different era, I'm going to adopt that filmmaking style.
Probably didn't need that. honestly. But it was good.
It made it a little bit schmaltzy.
Yeah.
It was fun and it was done really well.
Yeah.
But again, that was one of those things where I was like, Bradley, like, take your foot off the gas a little bit. Writer, director, producer, actor, like, we get it. Like, you're so good that, like, every once in a while I was like, probably didn't need that, or like,
Yeah.
no producer to rein him in and be like, maybe just focus on the performance or the characters and not also add this extra like homage to different eras of filmmaking on
Yeah.
top of all of that. I'm not mad at it. I was just like, it's a lot going on.
You just want to look him in the eyes and hug him and be like, it's going to be okay.
Who, Bradley?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he's just like so jacked up on movie making.
So this is a good segue to here's my question.
Yeah.
And I think you're a great person to ask.
Okay.
Maybe we both are.
I'm a little nervous now. What are you going to ask me?
What do you think of Children of Men? No, I'm kidding. So we're in the creative field.
Yeah.
We're both in advertising. And I think we both like the idea of making things and making art.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we would call ourselves artists, but we like to make art. And this movie was a whole exploration of what is art and the prestige of art and the kind of commercial appeal of art and going in and out of those things. And just not really a question, but just what do you think of that as someone who makes things, as a designer, but in the corporate space? How did you relate to that or not relate to it?
From the perspective of this movie.
Yeah, like you saw this movie, it was data in your brain. Like, did this make you feel about your own art in any kind of way?
It made me very happy. Like, this is the kind of movie that only someone with the juice of a Bradley Cooper can make.
Okay.
I think in our current filmmaking landscape, either you're making like a $250 million IP movie,
Yeah.
or you're making like a super indie horror or whatever. Like,
Low budget,
there's
but, yeah.
there's like no budget or $500 million,
Right.
and nowhere in between. I'm not exactly sure what the budget of this movie, but it looked like an expensive movie, and it's only someone with the juice of a Bradley Cooper and his cohort of, prestige filmmaking people who could get a Netflix to shell out the cash for it.
Right.
So I was really happy that Bradley Cooper, coming off of Stars Born, the world is in his hand. Like, he could probably do whatever he wanted after that movie.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I'm going to take on this passion project that Steven Spielberg is handing to me, and I'm just going to fucking crush it. And I'm just going to do all the stuff there. And so to answer your question personally, I was like, awesome. Like, you're not chasing the bag necessarily.
Oh, I see. That's a very practical answer.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, now filmmaking's back, baby.
Well,
Like,
I was very happy to see that this guy who's clearly so excited by the idea of filmmaking
yeah.
is using his powers for good. And I felt a little bit encouraged by, like, stick to your guns, tell the stories you're passionate about. Yes, like, I'm not in his position. I'm not a multi-million-dollar per movie star.
Yeah.
So I need to, like, take jobs that'll pay the bills.
Yeah.
But it's also was very encouraging to be like, chase the stories you're excited about.
Right.
Don't be shy about putting all your ideas into it and putting yourself into it and making yourself part of the work. And I was just, I don't know, I felt very encouraged by it.
For the same reasons, it made me feel like a fucking idiot. Because, like, there's things I spend a lot of time on, like a pilot or a screenplay, and various degrees of success and not on that.
Yeah.
And then, this channel. And this channel, if you take a function of time, is that labor of love. Like, you were putting in a lot of work, and you can call it art maybe. But then it's like, I compare, like, this guy composing his papers of music for an orchestra, and then, like, the dumb fucking 30-second sketches we make. And not to belittle that, but it's just like, it's the opportunity. There's no reason a 30-second Instagram thing. It's fleeting. And I guess that bummed me out a little bit, because it's like the medium of having one thing that you're really good at and putting all your eggs and caring and watering it, and that is being afforded to fewer and fewer people, possibly, because everything's very democratized with content. And so, not to be a downer, but it made me realize that it's like you have to, unfortunately, maybe do both. Be on the fleeting 30-second side, but then just because you're doing that, don't give up the more your precious longer, or whatever it is, your screenplays, your novels, your music, your whatever it is you're doing. If you're making things, don't give up on that, because there's so much beauty that you can't tap into in more broadly farting things out into the world.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And I think the movie went out of its way to express, I think that's something that lives beside all of us creatives, because in the movie, Bernstein is being interviewed and he's like, well, I really haven't accomplished that much. And I haven't really made that much.
Even him saying that.
Right.
Such a bummer.
But also it was kind of encouraging, because they're like, oh, dude, if Leonard Bernstein has imposter syndrome, or if he's like, I wrote West Side Story, but like that's
not music.
That's too lowbrow. I'm really trying to make something great and lasting. I'm like, oh, okay. So everyone kind of has this thing of like,
he's insatiable.
Insatiable. You're not enjoying your success because you're too focused on like the abstract ideal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a lot of thinking about that, because I definitely had a period where I was working on stuff that on paper I should have been very excited about, but for whatever reason I just wasn't feeling the juice, and I was like feeling a little bit, maybe I was burnt out or cynical.
Right.
And it took a while to like stop, be like, these are great opportunities. If it's not what you want to be doing, find a new thing.
Yeah.
But don't just get bummed out and phone it in because you're just like bummed out.
Yeah.
Or you're just like, whatever inner fire is burning is not getting fed.
Yeah.
Find a way to satisfy that.
Yeah, and put yourself in positions and be with people who will let you. So much of it is circumstantial, in my opinion, being an artist. There's so many iterations of the world where Leonard Bernstein isn't Leonard Bernstein. If that guy doesn't call in sick and he doesn't lead the New York Philharmonic,
yeah,
and he doesn't build this whole mythology around himself, and to your earlier point, buy into his own bullshit, maybe that's why that exists. It's bullshit, but it's necessary because it creates an environment in which everyone else allows you to do what you got to fucking do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he had a very like blessed career. He was clearly a massive talent.
Yeah.
I think that's what's complicated too about these like great man movies, is that the point, for better or worse, is that like there's only so many people like this in history who can achieve this level of success and have the chops to keep it up.
Yeah.
So if you are an introspective artist watching a movie about Leonard Bernstein or Pablo Picasso or any other great, we can get into like movie biopics in a second, but yeah, it is a tough moment, like you're saying. I guess I did feel this too, and I was kind of pushing it down.
Unpacking the trauma here.
This is a breakthrough. This is the free therapy portion of the podcast. That you can't help but compare your own life to this person.
You can't, because they're so incredible.
Yeah.
And you look around, you're just like, oh fuck, I'd like Domino's the other night.
I have an answer to this, but I'll ask you: is there someone in modern pop culture, like alive today, that you look at that you are like inexplicably competitive with?
Yes. I mean, the answer is yes. I feel like I have those twinges and thoughts when I listen to a song or movie. I no names are coming to head right now, but why? Do you have somebody in mind?
I found out that me and Kendrick Lamar are very close in age, and for some reason in my brain I'm like, I just need to keep up.
Yeah, I mean that tracks.
Which is insane.
You guys have similar origin stories.
Because if you put us apples to apples, we have nothing in common, and he is a singular voice of his generation.
Right.
So why do I have the impulse to be like, oh, we're born a few months apart?
Right.
Why am I not as successful as Kendrick Lamar? The answer is very clear, obviously. And really it just comes down to I'm just a huge admirer of him and his talent and his music.
I think that's what it is. You listen to something and you're just like, when there's art you watch and you listen to and you like,
Yeah.
and you know exactly how it was made, and you're like, huh, that's nifty. Oh, cool. And then there's art that you love and you have no fucking clue how they did it, what connections of neurons and formed for them to produce that fucking thing, and you're like,
where did this come from?
and that causes admiration, but then also jealousy and anger.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I've talked about it before that every once in a while I'll see something and I know if I'm starting to get a little bit salty, I'm like, ooh, that's really good. Like, if it's so good, then I'm like, shit.
And I have the opposite too. I have like Schadenfreude. Like, I'm like happy when I see like a big budget movie and it sucks. I'm just like, yes. Like,
this is so.
I could do better than that.
When going into this movie, you were kind of like hoping for it to be bad because you were like anti-Brad for some reason.
No. I would admit if I was that's more like a new Jurassic Park or Marvel or something.
Oh,
I'm just
yeah.
like, this is a piece of steaming shit. Like, I could do better than this.
Yeah, Marvel going down the drain. I have to admit, I'm like, thank God, finally. Like that,
Yeah.
It's supposed to fail. I wasn't like hoping for it to fail, but I totally hear what you're saying. Of like, yeah, this is such an interesting thing that we've gotten into because I definitely have felt this, but I don't think I've ever actually like put it into words. This feeling of like. And everyone, I'm sure, experiences to one degree or another. And I think we live in the era of social media where we're constantly comparing our lives to other people.
Yeah.
So to make a whole movie about how insanely talented and charismatic and just blessed this guy was, and to celebrate that,
Yeah.
is a tough thing to approach, but I was like, this was great, and I'm glad I got to like get a taste of that for a second.
Yeah, maybe definitely my favorite. There's this era of musical biopics.
Yeah,
Definitely my favorite one.
really.
Yeah.
It's a great segue into our top 5
All right, let's do it.
credits. Okay, so I chose top 5 film biopics.
Okay.
To be honest, it's kind of a reach because this movie defies that genre a little bit. I think
Right.
if you tried to classify this, if I asked you like what genre filmmaking is this, and I said it's a music biopic, it is, but it's a lot more than that. So I tried to pick a couple of movies that do a really good job of like bucking the biopic aesthetic.
Yeah.
And like there's like certain, like you touched on it before, but in this like great musician life story movie, there's like expected beats of like the first time they hear like the Elvis that just came out last year.
Right.
I hated that movie because nothing to do with the movie itself, but it was so unabashed about doing the thing that we've seen so many times before of like the young man has this moment of inspiration from a tough beginning, and then
the rise and fall,
and then he meets his love, and then he gets addicted to drugs, and then like it's just like this very rote story structure that we've seen 100,000 times.
In terms of vibe, though, I can't picture a more opposite movie to what your general energy is.
Me?
Like you and Elvis in a room is just oil and water.
Me and Elvis, actual Elvis Presley or the movie?
Both at this point.
I think me and actual Elvis could have hang. I think. I like to think that movie really bothered me. It was just so. It just couldn't get out of its own way the entire time.
Yeah.
So maybe we can talk about films that it didn't work for as well.
Yeah.
But I tried to pull together a few film biopics, like not film biopics, sorry, music biopics that defy the genre.
Okay, let's hear it.
So number 5, I did Sid and Nancy.
Your number fives, I never even heard of your number fives.
That's good.
Sid and Nancy. Okay.
Sid and Nancy. It's directed by Alex Cole, who it came out in '86. Alex Cole did one other movie called Repo Man, and then he never really kind of popped.
Okay.
But this is Gary Oldman's second movie. Gary Oldman, if you don't know who he is, like you've seen his face, he's Sirius Black. He's done every movie. He's Commissioner Gordon in the Dark Knight trilogy. He's just like that dude. He's one of the best living actors today, in my opinion. So Gary Oldman plays Sid Vicious from the Sex Pistols.
Oh, okay.
And Chloe Webb plays what's her name? Nancy Spungen. And it's just a movie about those two people. It's very similar to this movie, actually, where it's not about the phenomenon of punk rock and the Sex Pistols. It's just about these two people,
right,
in a moment. And Sid Vicious's story, unfortunately, is tragic. He was a heroin addict, and he just got consumed by fame. And they kind of both died tragically in a hotel room.
Jesus.
And it's a movie about that decline, and just about fame and self-mythologizing and codependency and drug use. And it's the fact that it's Gary Oldman's second movie, and he just he becomes this guy.
Yeah.
It's a really incredible insight if you are a fan of rock stars or punk rock or the stories of these people. I don't know if he's a member of the 27 Club, but he's definitely, Sid Vicious goes down as one of the great, died before his prime.
Right.
Super tragic stories of music. And it's just so beautiful, and it's telling. It's so sympathetic of these two incredibly damaged, troubled, tragic people.
Yeah.
That you almost forget that he's a real historical figure, and you're just kind of wrapped up in these two people's relationship.
All right.
So if you're if you're into the punk rock scene at all, it's good to go watch, because people kind of forget that when it started, it was a real, when you talk about grit or edge, or when punk rock was really starting and grimy, it was scary.
They used to piss on their audience, right?
They did everything. They it was a real culture about.
That's an epic move.
What?
Peeing on
literally
your audience.
pitting on your. I mean, yeah. The whole scene was about how far can we push it, how much can we piss off our audience and still have them come back to us. Self-mutilation, shitting on stage, that scene was really scary in a way. Drugs, alcohol,
yeah.
And it's just an encapsulation. So I recommend that movie. The number 5 is usually a dark horse, but I think it's so good. And I haven't seen it in a long time, but I was doing my research and I was like, oh, that's such a great one that doesn't really come up in these conversations.
Nice.
So that's number 5.
Can I guess a movie on the 4? Can I guess one
of course. Yeah, or nominate one yourself.
Well, I want to see if you have it.
Yeah.
Amadeus.
Yep.
Fuck yeah.
Number 2. So we're just going to jump up to Amadeus.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about it?
Oh, I haven't seen that in forever, but yeah, that's an incredible. That's the 80s is such a tough decade for movies, and that one stands out as so good.
Yeah.
Really, it's a two-hander, not a love story, and it's almost like Hamilton. If you've seen the play Hamilton, just the jealousy and the slow corruption of one man. It's actually the way that Salieri feels about Mozart is exactly how you feel about Kendrick. So they could make that movie too.
Let me, for the record, I love Kendrick. I'm not rooting against Kendrick.
Not plotting his demise.
I just want him to keep winning, and whatever he puts out, I consume immediately. He's just someone who I view as an inspiration of what is achievable. If that makes
You're in
sense.
awe of him, but you also want to hurt him.
No.
Okay.
I'm in awe of him, and I wish I was as successful and as prolific as he is.
Right. Okay. So Salieri and Mozart. If you want to take it from here.
Sure. So the movie, if you haven't seen it, is about Mozart and his era, but it's told from the perspective of his quote unquote arch rival, this other composer named Salieri, and it's really told from an outsider perspective, which is a good contrast to Maestro, which is told from Leonard Bernstein's perspective. Here we're watching this guy who is a legendary composer in his own right, but cannot for the life of him get out from under the shadow of Mozart, who no one can. He's fucking Mozart. Like, you and I are living in his shadow to this very day.
Right.
So it's just this descent into madness this guy has for just being like, I'm good too. Why can't I beat this guy? And every time in social circles, at parties, in concert, he just cannot get over on this guy.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting portrayal of competition in art, which is what we were talking about before.
And it's funny the way it's treated with levity, but it's very dark.
Yeah.
It's almost like a Tom and Jerry
Yeah.
cartoon.
That's funny.
But yeah, it's just so good.
And also in the movie, Mozart's a real prick.
Yeah.
Like, you kind of hate him.
Yeah.
But so they do a good job of being like, fuck that guy. But also he's obviously one of the most prolific artists ever, period. Yeah. So just a great movie, really immersive for the time period. And just kind of one of those movies, kind of like Maestro, where like they don't really make movies like that anymore.
No.
Super immersive, the period piece, like the way how lived in it feels and how real it feels. It's a really kind of one of a kind accomplishment. Yeah.
Amadeus. Check
it out. That was number 2. Do you want to try to guess another one?
I can't. Yeah, the only ones that are coming to mind are like Rocket Man and Bohemian Rhapsody, but I don't think those.
So I skipped those because those are good examples of like following that structure that I get annoyed by. Another one number 4 that I put down was Behind the Candelabra.
I've heard that phrase. I have no context.
All right, so this
for
is
what
Steven
means.
Soderbergh, who we touched on last episode.
You mentioned him last week, and I was like embarrassed to admit, but I will. I haven't seen one movie he's made.
Really?
Not one frame of 1 second of one movie.
Any of the Ocean's movies?
No.
Wow. I mean, I'm jealous almost because that's a stacked back catalog that you basically can't go wrong. Like, you could pick almost anything he's ever made, including this movie, and it's a banger.
Cool. I don't know why he's just off my radar.
He's kind of, for whatever reason, he's outstandingly good. He's had massive critical and commercial success. Like, he created and directed both the Ocean's trilogy and the Magic Mike stuff. So from a money standpoint, he's hit it. He's nominated for Oscars. Like, he wrote and directed Traffic, which was this incredibly formative movie. What's the other movie that I'm thinking of? Julia Roberts, is it? Whatever. Anyway, he's great. Like, he's great. Go look him up. You can't go wrong. He made this movie called Behind the Candelabra, which was an HBO movie, so it never even got a cinematic release. It's about Liberace, played by Michael Douglas, who's, again, a very kind of, in comparison to Maestro, very flamboyant, heralded in his time as like an incredible musician.
What year was he like doing his thing?
Like the 60s and 70s.
Liberace to me, because I've heard that name, it sounds like an old-timey
Liberace
composer,
yeah,
but he's pretty modern.
He's pretty modern, and he's kind of become shorthand for like the most obviously closeted person. Because if you go back and watch footage of him, he's got sequins, and he's always had a candelabra on his piano, extremely flamboyant. In our day would be a gay icon. In his day was very closeted. And anytime he was on camera was talking about never finding, like, being a bachelor and not being able to find the right woman and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But and extremely complex. And the movie is about him and a 6-year relationship he had with, I can't even remember the name of the character, but it's played by Scott Thorson, who's played by Matt Damon.
Scott Thorson played by Matt Damon. Scott Thorson's is the person.
Matt Damon plays Liberace's boyfriend.
Gotcha.
And this insane, tumultuous relationship that they had, again, of like a person who just wants to be close to the center of the universe.
Yeah.
And how it destroys Matt Damon's life because you just cannot tie down Liberace.
Can't tie him down.
It's very similar to Maestro in a lot of ways. The performances are amazing. There's a lot of prosthetics in this movie too, because in real life, the boyfriend started getting plastic surgery to look more like Liberace. So Matt Damon, throughout the course of the movie, has like a new nose and new eyebrows, and it's just like, it's wild, and it's funny, and it's tragic, and it's about a very formative figure in music and in pop culture, but told in a very weird and exciting way.
Nice.
Go check it out. The next movie I have is a bit. I cheated because I was going to put Walk the Line.
It's a good one.
Which is a great one, but that movie kind of set a standard that everyone kind of like Ray and all those other movies you mentioned kind of ripped off of, like telling the story.
Right.
So
right.
what I put instead was Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story.
Just as good one.
Just as good.
Just as good.
And a perfect send up of that model.
Well, in terms of parody or
Yeah, like it took that form of filmmaking that Walk the Line kind of nailed, and then like a million copycats were made, and this movie in one fell swoop just like killed it.
Took all the air out of it.
Took all because it so succinctly spoofed that genre.
Yeah.
In such a brilliant and funny and like high-low.
I feel like that's a bit of a slept-on movie.
Walk
like
Hard?
I think it's becoming like cult classic now.
Yeah.
But like when it came out, I feel like not many people acknowledged it, how good it was.
If you haven't seen it, it's John C. Reilly playing a fictional character named Dewey Cox, who, and the movie starts with him as a poor boy in the South discovering music, and his brother is tragically killed, and his father blames him for the death, and then he has this whole musical journey, and it follows the arc. It's mostly a spoof of Walk the Line, but it follows the arc of all these things. But through the course of the movie, he has like an Elvis Presley phase, and then he has a David Bowie phase, and he has he just like trying to think of he just hits every like moment in like in music.
He goes through the decades. He goes electric. He
Beach Boys,
right.
And
he meets the Beatles at one point.
He meets the Beatles, so he's just kind of like the Forrest Gump of music, basically.
Right.
And it spoofs everything. It's so funny. In every decade, he walks in on somebody doing a new drug in a closet, and they're like, "You don't want to do marijuana. Like, it makes you feel great and it makes music sound better." And he's like, "I think I do want to do that."
It's Tim Meadows every time, right?
And it's just so funny. And the music is great too, which puts it over the top, where it's like, it's not just a spoof. It's also, like all great impressions, it comes from a place of love.
Right.
So it's not technically a real biopic, but I want it in there because it's like, if you are itching to watch that type of movie, just go watch that, and then you've seen all of them, and you're a pro. And why I was so angry at Elvis, because I was like, Walk Hard already came out, like we already put this to bed. So Walk Hard, and then we covered Amadeus. So number one is La Vie en Rose.
I know the song.
So everyone knows the song. The song is performed by a musician named Edith Piaf. Marion Cotillard plays her in this movie, and it's I think it's a perfect 1-to-1 with Maestro, because it's telling the story of this. You may know her name, you may not. You definitely know her music, and in her time and in France in particular, she was a larger than life figure, but she led a very complicated, tragic life. And this movie is basically birth to death, and Marion Cotillard absolutely smokes it. Like, I can't think of a bet. I saw that movie and I was like, she's one of the best ever. Like, no matter what she does, forever, for the rest of time.
Wow.
This movie solidifies her as like, and she won an Oscar for it, but like,
what year did this come out?
This was 2007.
Oh, not that old at all.
No, and I think this was like her kind of like star making role, and she goes.
Not gonna lie, Elias, I don't know who this is.
Who?
The main actress.
Marion Cotillard.
Yeah.
She was the wife in, I'm saying.
I'm always so embarrassed to be like, I don't know.
This is great because we're turning. If we're just turning people on to stuff, this is great. Marion Cotillard was the wife in Inception.
Oh, she's also in The Dark Knight Rising.
Yeah, she was Talia al Ghul in The Dark Knight.
Cool.
You've seen her in a lot of things.
She's great.
She's so good. She's great in those movies, but you have no idea the power that she has, because you go then watch this movie. She goes off, and it's
hell yeah,
so incredible. And I get worked up talking about it, because every time I think about it, I hadn't thought about it in such a long time. And I was making this list, and I was like, oh, fuck yeah, this movie. Like, I forgot about this movie. It's so good. And if you're just into period pieces or character studies or whatever, it's so good. And I think it's a great companion to this movie, because it's really such a great narrative about what happens to a person when they become like the physical embodiment of an ideal in art, and how does that affect them, and how does that affect the people around them? Like,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
It is interesting. And I feel like Maestro, closing thoughts would be like, you always see the bad side of that, right? And you always see like how that ruins relationships and how selfish can you be, and you're just doing this for the public. But to some extent, there's a good side of it, and you're honestly sacrificing a lot to give people beauty in this world and help them get through their days and help them escape, whatever it is they're trying to escape through your art. And I don't know, I just thought that it was a really cool angle on an existing, maybe tired question or theme. It was just very different.
So you thought, in summation, that movie was like a positive message by the end?
100%.
Yeah.
I think I took the wrong lesson.
No. That's why I think it's a sign. And I actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the movie starts with a quote where, like, from Leonard Bernstein, where it's like, art has no answers. It just raises questions.
Yeah.
I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but I think the movie did a good job of like raising a bunch of interesting questions.
Yeah.
And kind of evoking different reactions from different people, like good art does.
So you didn't think it had a happy ending?
Happy ending. I think he's like a semi-tragic figure.
Yeah.
I think the point that I took away was that he was so narcissistic. But not in a self-aware way.
Yeah.
But he couldn't help but live his
He had to
truth.
be him. Yeah.
And he seemed to be enjoying himself. Like the end of the movie,
Right.
he was happy. I mean, he was obviously he had experienced a lot of tragedy in his life, but the end of the movie is him being like in a pretty good spot. He's not a tragic figure. It's obviously a celebration of this guy.
But he took, I think it's a fine line, but what made to me this movie happy ending instead of a sad ending was just one choice at the end where he gets a call and the guy's like, oh, you have to do this. And he's like, I'm not leaving. Like, he went home to take care of his wife.
Yeah.
For years. And it's like, when push came to shove, when all the cards were on the table, when she needed it most, he wasn't a dickhead.
Yeah.
And it's like, hell yeah, that's
the
awesome.
thing to take. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a good thing to note to close the show with.
Don't be dickheads.
If you're a genius, don't be a dick.
All right. This is good up.
This is great. Thanks, dude. Bye, everybody.
Bye.